Welcome to Deep Fear, where your darkest nightmares turn real. Tonight's story may just keep you awake, so let's start the video. And don't forget to subscribe. This happened to me in July of 2022. I've never told this story publicly. Honestly, I've debated even writing it down. But it's been almost 2 years now, and I still can't get the images out of my head. If I don't say something, I think I'll go crazy. My name's Lucas. I'm 31 now. I've always been into solo camping, the kind where you really get away from people. No crowds, no RVs, just me, a tent, and nature. I work a stressful job in insurance, and every summer I take at least a week to completely unplug. In July 2022, I found a spot in upstate New York near a place called Crystal Lake. Not the one from the movies. This was a real lake, smaller and off the beaten path. It's not even on Google Maps unless you zoom all the way in. I only found it because of an old post on a hiking forum. A guy mentioned it was unmarked, unregulated, and totally untouched. That was exactly what I wanted. So I loaded my Jeep with gear, grabbed my fishing rod, and drove 4 hours from the city. The trail wasn't hard to find, but it wasn't an official trail either. Just a narrow path through thick woods, clearly carved out by other off-grid campers over time. It took me about 2 hours to hike in, and when I finally arrived, I was stunned. The lake was beautiful, silent, isolated. The water looked like black glass, perfectly still. On one side, the tree line curved in a crescent shape around the shore, and on the other, a rocky ridge jutted up about 15 feet. I set up my tent at the base of the ridge, where the grass was dry and flat. I didn't see a single person, no other campsites, no boats, not even trash. It felt untouched. I should have left the moment the sun went down. That first night, things felt off. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of sloshing, like someone slowly wading into the lake. I figured it was just an animal. Deer, maybe. But when I peeked out through my tent flap, there was nothing. Just the moonlight glinting on the water. I lay back down and listened. For a moment it was silent. Then I heard breathing. I froze. It wasn't close, but it was out there. Wet, raspy breathing, almost like panting. It came from the direction of the water and then it stopped. No splashing, no footsteps, just silence. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I chalked it up to nerves. Maybe I'd heard my own breathing. I grabbed my rod and went out to the water's edge. The lake was calm, but I noticed something strange. The water was too dark, not just deep, it was nearly black. Even a few feet in, I couldn't see the bottom. But the weirdest part? There were no fish. None. I sat for over 2 hours and didn't get a single bite. Not even a nibble. The water was eerily still. No bugs. No ripples. Just that feeling like something was watching. Later that afternoon, I climbed the ridge to get a better view. The higher vantage point gave me a clear look at the lake, and I noticed something I hadn't before. About 50 yards from shore, there was a dark spot in the water. Perfectly circular. At first I thought it was just a shadow from a cloud, until I realized there were no clouds. I zoomed in with my camera lens. The dark spot wasn't a shadow. It was a hole, a massive one, a pit that dropped into pure blackness. Something about it made my skin crawl. It was like the lake had an eye. That night, things got worse. At around 1:30 a.m., I heard the water again, but this time it was louder, like something heavy was climbing out. I unzipped my tent as slowly as I could and looked out. I didn't see anything at first. Then I saw movement near the shoreline. Something stood there. A tall figure, hunched, dripping wet. It wasn't an animal, it was too upright. But it wasn't a person either. Its arms were too long, and its head, it looked like it was missing, or maybe it was bent downward. It stood there for almost a full minute. Then it jerked, violently, and turned toward my tent. I dove back and zipped it shut, holding my breath. I didn't move. The footsteps didn't come. I listened for over an hour. When I looked again, it was gone. The next morning, I planned to leave. I packed quickly, shoved everything into my bag without folding. I needed to get out of there. But the trail was gone. I don't mean overgrown. I mean it was completely gone, like the trees had shifted overnight. The rocks I used to mark my way were gone. The trailhead was just dense brush and thorns. I circled for hours. Eventually, I wound back up at the lake. That's when I saw it. The hole in the water had moved. It was closer to shore. And worse, it was bubbling. Something was rising. I didn't wait to see what. I hiked straight north, through brush, mud, thorns. I didn't care about my gear or direction. I just kept going until I finally found a Forest Service road. When I got back to civilization, I searched for Crystal Lake online. I couldn't find any trace, no hiking reports, no aerial maps, nothing. It's like it doesn't exist, or it wasn't supposed to. I know how this sounds. I've told a few close friends about it, and they just say I was overtired, hallucinating from dehydration, maybe even lost and dreaming. But I've hiked all over this country. I know what it's like to be alone in the woods, to feel afraid, to imagine things in the dark. This wasn't that. Something was wrong with that lake. And I wasn't the only one who'd seen it. 3 days later, back in my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I found myself sketching the shape of that black circle in the lake over and over. It had this perfect edge, like a sinkhole, but it pulsed in my memory, like it had depth, movement, intent. I started digging online. I posted anonymously on Reddit, describing the lake without naming it, just to see if anyone else had ever encountered something similar. That's when I got a DM. "I know that place. You saw it too." It was from a user named GhostTracer47. Their account was brand new, no posts, no comments. But what they sent next shook me. The lake moves. It appears in different places. I've seen it twice. 2013 in Vermont, and 2021 near the Catskills. You're lucky you got away. Others don't. They sent me a photo. Grainy, old, but unmistakable. That same black hole in the center of a lake. And behind it, something emerging. Blurry, pale, long-limbed. Exactly what I saw standing on the shoreline. The old story. A few days later, I went to a small public library near the area where I thought I'd hiked. I told the clerk I was researching strange drownings in remote lakes. He didn't blink, just said, "You mean the story of the deep one?" I froze. He walked me over to an old newspaper archive and pulled out a folder labeled Warren County, Unexplained. Inside were photocopies from the 1940s through the 70s. People had gone missing. Campers, hikers, fishermen. No remains were ever found. Only their shoes, or their boats, or sometimes just wet footprints leading away from the shoreline and vanishing into the trees. One clipping stood out. 1962. Man claims lake moved overnight, says wife disappeared without sound. It quoted a man who swore a lake had appeared where there hadn't been one the day before. His wife had gone down to investigate something floating. She never came back. By morning, the lake was gone. Gone. Just mud where water had been. The return against every ounce of logic, I went back. I know that sounds insane, but I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't losing it. I returned 2 weeks later. Same area, same trail. But this time, there was nothing. No lake, no trailhead, just woods. I hiked around for 5 hours and finally found a depression in the earth. A dried lake bed. Cracked, gray mud. I recognized the shape of the ridge. I was standing exactly where my tent had been. It was real, but the water was gone. And then I found something half buried in the dirt. My pocket knife, the one I dropped when I ran, rusted, but still there. So I camped one more night. I know, stupid. But I wanted to see what would happen. That night around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound I'll never forget. Creaking, like a dock swaying on still water, followed by dripping. I looked out. The lake was back, water glistening in the moonlight, perfectly calm. No animals, no wind, just the sound of something surfacing from deep below. And then I saw the hole again, right where it had been before. But now, there were shapes moving beneath it. Slow, undulating forms rising toward the surface. I ran. I didn't even pack. I didn't stop until sunrise. When I came back later with 2 forest rangers, there was no lake, just dry earth. And they looked at me like I was crazy. What I know now. Here's what I believe. That lake isn't part of any map because it doesn't stay in one place. It moves, it chooses. Maybe it's a rift, a breach between our world and something older. Maybe it's alive, but it feeds. It waits until someone's alone. It watches. It calls them closer. And when they look too long, or step into the water, it takes them. I think I was only spared because I ran. But something followed me back. Because every once in a while, usually around 3 a.m., I wake up and I hear sloshing and breathing. And when I look out the window, I swear the water in the street outside my apartment is darker than it should be. I tried to go back to normal life. Work, friends, groceries, calls with my mom, all the stuff that makes you feel grounded in reality. But it didn't stick. The first week back, I'd wake up gasping, heart racing, convinced I'd heard dripping water in my apartment. I checked my sinks, my shower, even the radiator, but every time, dry. Then I started seeing puddles, always small, always in strange places, by my bed, in the hallway, once on top of my kitchen table, like it had fallen from above. I live on the 3rd floor, and the nightmares, they weren't dreams. They felt like memories from another place, another depth. I'd find myself submerged, drifting downward in total blackness, unable to scream, my lungs full of cold pressure, and always, just before I'd wake up, I'd see them. Eyes, hundreds of them, watching from below. The apartment incident. One night in early August, just 3 weeks after Crystal Lake, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. My phone buzzed. That was strange on its own. I never get texts that late. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Look outside. That's it. No name, no contact photo. I sat up, heart hammering, and turned toward the window, and I swear on my life, for a moment, just a second, I saw a reflection in the glass that wasn't mine. It was wet, tall, pale, the same crooked posture I saw on the shore, the same missing or bent head. It stood behind me, staring through the glass, and when I spun around, nothing. But the floor beneath the window was soaked. The deep ones. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to know what this thing was. Why it picked me. Why it didn't just pull me into the lake and end it. I messaged Ghost Tracer 47 again. This time, he responded with a long thread of links. Ancient folklore, water spirits, lake legends from different parts of the world. But the theme was always the same. There are places where the veil is thinner, where water isn't just a natural element. It's a passage, a mirror, a trap. He told me there's a theory, fringe, a cult, that says some lakes aren't formed by glaciers or rivers or rain, but by things coming up from below, tunneling through stone to reach us. One passage he sent stood out. When the lake comes for you, it marks you. The watchers do not forget. To look into the black eye is to be seen by what lives beneath. I was marked. The return, again. I couldn't fight the pull any longer. I knew I had to go back, not just for answers, but to end it. I quit my job, told no one, loaded my Jeep again and drove north, not even sure I could find the place. But it was easier this time, like the forest wanted me back. And when I arrived, there it was. The lake. Back again, full and black and still. The same shape, the same ridge. But now there was something new. A dock. It hadn't been there before. It stretched out into the water, rotted and sun-bleached, but stable. And at the very end of it stood a figure. Tall, slouched, dripping. It didn't move. I should have turned around. I should have run again. But I didn't. I walked out onto the dock. Each step creaked under my boots. The air was cold, colder than it should have been for summer. My breath fogged. When I got close enough, I stopped. The figure was facing away. Then slowly, it turned. Its face was bloated, eyeless, skin split across the jaw like it had been crushed under pressure. And then, it opened its mouth. No sound, just a pulse, a vibration that rattled the boards under my feet. Behind it, the black hole in the lake widened. The surface rippled outward in perfect circles. And I felt it. A pull. My legs started moving on their own. The ending. I don't remember everything that happened next. I remember stepping forward. I remember the boards breaking under me. I remember cold, not just physical, but ancient. Cosmic. Like I'd fallen into the void between stars. And I remember the faces. Not just one figure, but dozens, hundreds. Some looked like people, others didn't. They swam around me in silence, staring with those blind eyes, mouths open in horror. But then something pulled me up. I woke up coughing on the shore, alone, covered in mud and lakeweed. It was morning. The lake was gone. Again. Why I'm telling you this, I've kept quiet for almost 2 years, but it's coming back. Last night I found wet footprints in my hallway, barefoot, long, webbed. My tub was full. I didn't fill it. And when I walked past the mirror for a split second, the reflection didn't match. I don't think I ever really left the lake. I think once it sees you, you're part of it. So if you ever hear about a place called Crystal Lake, not the movie one, the real one, and you decide to visit, don't look at the water too long. Don't walk the dock. And if you see something standing at the end of it, run. This happened to me and 3 of my friends back in the summer of 2019. There's a lake about 2 hours north of where I live in Oregon that most people haven't heard of. It's called Mirror Lake, tucked deep inside National Forest land. No ranger station, no visitor center, just an unmarked dirt road and a couple of narrow trails leading into the trees. The kind of place you'd only find if someone showed you. And for us, that person was my friend Jake. Jake's older cousin used to fish and camp there back in the early 2000s. He told us it was totally isolated, crystal clear, and best of all, untouched. You didn't need permits, and you wouldn't see another soul for miles. In other words, perfect for the kind of stupid, booze-fueled camping trip 4 guys in their early 20s think is a good idea. It was me, Jake, my roommate Paul, and our buddy Evan. We left on a Friday afternoon in late July and made it to the trailhead by about 6 p.m. From there, it was a 40-minute hike to the lake, lugging coolers, tents, and gear through dense forest and narrow switchbacks. We arrived just before sunset, and yeah, it was beautiful. Smooth water reflecting the trees perfectly. No bugs, no noise, just quiet. Still, peaceful in that way that makes you start whispering without realizing it. We pitched our tents on the east side of the lake, where the ground was flattest. Evan started a fire. Paul cracked open the first beer, and for the next couple of hours, It was just laughs, drinks, and dumb stories. It felt like summer was supposed to. Until the lights started. The first night. It was around midnight when we first noticed them. At first, we thought it was lightning. A quick, soft flash behind the trees on the opposite side of the lake. No thunder, though. Just a muted white pulse, like a camera flash from far away. Then another. And another. We turned off our lanterns and stood there in silence, watching. Each pulse lasted only a second or two. They weren't in the sky, not above the trees, but coming from inside the forest on the far side of the lake. And they were moving. Slowly. Left to right. Like someone walking with a lantern. Jake said it was probably another group of campers. Evan said it was fireflies. But I've seen fireflies. These weren't that. They didn't blink or float. These lights followed a pattern, almost rhythmic, like a slow, deliberate signal. After a while, the lights stopped. We sat back down and laughed it off, but the energy had shifted. Nobody admitted it, but we were all looking over our shoulders now, listening more, talking less. When we turned in for the night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in my tent, staring at the nylon ceiling, listening to the forest. There were no owls, no wind, just this low, soft hum, so faint I thought it was my own ears ringing. Then I saw light. It pulsed through the walls of my tent. Not from the fire. That had died out. This was whiter, colder, steady. I unzipped the flap. Across the lake, the trees were glowing. It wasn't a soft light anymore. The whole tree line across the lake was glowing, like the forest itself was lit from within. A faint, bluish-white radiance. Not flickering. Not moving. Just humming, steady and unnatural. I leaned out of my tent, blinking. It looked like someone had lit a dozen floodlights behind the trees, only there was no source, no movement, no shadows. I turned toward Jake's tent to whisper his name, but before I could say anything, I heard a splash. A loud one, like someone doing a cannonball. Then another, then three more, rapid and rhythmic. Splash, splash, splash. But I didn't see anything hit the water. No ripples, no waves, just the sound. And then, silence. The light dimmed gradually until it vanished completely. No one else stirred. The forest went dead quiet. I backed into my tent, zipped it shut, and sat there wide-eyed, clutching the camping knife in my backpack until I finally passed out sometime after 4 a.m. Morning after. I didn't say anything at first. Neither did Jake or Evan, but Paul brought it up while we were eating breakfast. Anyone else see the lake light up last night? We all stopped chewing. Jake nodded slowly. Thought I was dreaming. Evan, always the skeptic, just said, I bet there's an old generator on that side of the lake. Ranger station, maybe. Paul shook his head. Number. It wasn't like that. It didn't cast shadows. It was like the trees were glowing from the inside. We ended up grabbing the binoculars and looking across the lake. But we didn't see anything unusual. Just trees, moss, a couple of large rocks near the shore. Jake said we should paddle across and check it out, but none of us moved. We stayed on our side all day, swam a little, fished, caught nothing, tried to act like everything was normal, but none of us said it out loud. The water felt wrong. Too cold, too still, no insects, no fish, no birds, like the whole lake was waiting for something. The second night, that night the lights came back, brighter this time and closer. We were sitting by the fire when they started again. Not flashes this time, but steady beams, maybe 30 feet high, scanning across the treetops on the opposite bank, like searchlights, but they made no sound, no drone, no hum, just movement, back and forth, back and forth. And then we heard it. Voices, low, distorted, and echoing like they were underwater. Not words, just murmuring. Chanting, almost. Paul stood up. All right, I'm done. We're leaving in the morning. No one argued. Jake tried to say it was probably light refracting through mist or swamp gas or some other science-y crap, but his voice was shaking. We doused the fire, stayed awake with knives and bear spray beside us, and eventually crawled into our tents, each of us pretending like we weren't going to sleep. But I didn't make it an hour before something woke me up. Crunching. Footsteps on pine needles. They were behind my tent. I froze, barely breathing. The footsteps circled once, slowly, then stopped at the front. I held my knife tight and waited. Then came a new sound, a low hum, mechanical, rising in pitch like a generator winding up. The entire tent filled with blue light. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. Then it was gone. I must have blacked out, or maybe I just shut down mentally. I don't remember falling asleep, but when I woke up, it was light out. The air smelled like ozone. That weird metallic tang you smell before a storm. My skin felt tight, sunburned almost. But there hadn't been any sun the night before. I stumbled out of my tent, and the others were already up. All three of them looked like hell, pale, wide-eyed, like they hadn't slept. No one said anything for a long time. Finally, Paul muttered, "We're leaving. Now." No one argued. Something was missing. We broke down camp in under 20 minutes, but when we did inventory before heading out, we noticed something was gone. Jake's backpack, the one with his camera, phone, and satellite tracker, had vanished. Not stolen, not misplaced, just gone. It had been inside his tent, zipped. He was a maniac about gear. But now there was just a flat spot where it had been, and something else. Footprints, not boots, not animals, bare feet, leading from the edge of the lake, directly to Jake's tent, then away into the woods. We followed them. The prints continued for maybe 50 yards before just stopping. No trail, no drag marks, just forest. Jake didn't say a word, but he looked like he was trying not to cry. We started hiking back. That's when things got worse. We'd walked this trail 2 days before, no problem. But now it didn't feel right. The trees were thicker, the light dimmer. The landmarks we remembered, the split log, the forked pine, the red moss patch, were gone. It felt like we were looping. We should have reached the car in 40 minutes. After 2 hours, we were still surrounded by trees. Evan started yelling, screaming at the woods. Paul was already panicking. Then Jake stopped. He was staring at something ahead of us, a break in the trees. We rushed to catch up, and that's when we saw it. The lake, again. Somehow, we were back at Mirror Lake. But this time it wasn't the same. There were rocks now, arranged in perfect circles near the shoreline. Dozens of them. Each one had a single item resting in the center. A shoe, a wallet, a flashlight, a sleeping bag. Some of them were wet. And right at the water's edge was Jake's backpack, neatly placed. Zippers closed. He ran toward it before we could stop him. He dropped to his knees and unzipped the main pocket, and let out a horrible sound. I looked over his shoulder. Inside the backpack was his camera, but the screen was cracked, and the lens was melted. We turned it on anyway. It had only one saved video. The footage was shaky and dark, like it had been recorded from inside the tent. It started with silence, just Jake's breathing. Then that blue glow appeared again, washing over everything. Jake's hand reached out to unzip the flap, and the camera turned to face the lake. What we saw next made my skin crawl. There were figures on the water, floating, but not swimming. Perfectly still. 5 of them. Each one had a body that shimmered slightly, like they weren't solid. Their limbs were long, dangling beneath the surface like jellyfish tendrils. Their heads, if you could call them that, were featureless. No eyes, no face. and then they turned. In sync. Towards the camera, and all 5 of them lifted out of the water, hovering above the surface. The light on the video flared, and the screen went black. We stood in silence after watching that video. No one knew what to say. Jake sat there, holding the camera, shaking. Paul backed away from the backpack like it was radioactive. Evan muttered something I couldn't hear, and just turned and started walking towards the tree line. None of us stopped him. I don't think we could have if we tried. Then Jake whispered something. They saw me. That broke the silence. Paul grabbed Jake and practically dragged him up the slope away from the lake. I followed, and we started trying to retrace our steps again, looking for anything familiar. We didn't make it 10 minutes before we heard a scream. Evan. It came from the woods behind us, not far. We turned around, ran back, shouting his name. We found his backpack first, lying in the middle of the trail, zippers open, contents scattered. Then we saw his flashlight, still on. Then, nothing. Evan was gone. We searched for hours, circled the area, called his name until our voices were raw, but there wasn't a single sign of him. No blood, no struggle, no trail, just gone. Finally, just before sunset, we had to make a choice. Stay another night, or push forward through unknown forest in the dark. Jake didn't even speak. He just started walking. Somehow, and I still don't understand how, we stumbled onto a gravel service road about an hour later. It wasn't the one we came in on, but it led us out. We walked for miles in silence before a ranger truck found us just before midnight. We didn't tell them everything, just that a friend was lost. We gave a rough location. They searched for days, brought in dogs, drones, helicopters. They never found Evan. We were interviewed, of course. A lot. By search and rescue? The Forest Service. Even some suit from Homeland Security. We stuck to the story. He went missing while hiking, but something happened after that. Jake got sick. Not like a flu or infection. I mean sick. His skin got pale, then gray. His hair thinned. He lost weight fast. Doctors couldn't find anything wrong. Just said it was severe psychological trauma. He wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't talk to anyone. Just sat in his apartment, lights off, windows covered. Then, 2 months later, he vanished. No note, no signs of a struggle. Just his apartment, left wide open. And in the middle of the living room floor? A puddle of water? It's been almost 6 years. I've never been back to Mirror Lake. Honestly, I don't even know where it is anymore. I tried once, thought I'd retrace the hike. But the road we took was gone. Literally. I drove back and forth for hours. It was just trees, like the place never existed. But sometimes, I see flashes in the sky when I'm out in the country. Not lightning, not planes, just soft, silent pulses. Once, I saw one reflected in a pond by the road. And sometimes, around 3 or 4 a.m., I hear that hum again. Software familiar. And if I dream too long, I see them. Still hovering over the water, still watching. So if you ever go camping near a lake you've never heard of, one that doesn't show up on maps, and you see blue lights over the trees, don't stare at them. Don't follow them. Because if they see you, you'll never come back whole. This happened to me and my family in August of 2016. Every summer growing up, my parents would take us on a week-long vacation to a cabin in rural Wisconsin. It was our tradition: escape the city, unwind, and fish. But when I was 19, we decided to try a new place. The usual resort was booked, so my dad found a rental cabin online that looked amazing. It was in a place called Heron's Hollow, a tiny lakeside town about 5 hours north of Milwaukee. Population barely cracked 300. 1 gas station, 1 diner, and a bait shop. The cabin itself sat on the shore of Lake Whitlow, and the pictures made it look like paradise. Rustic wood panels, a long private dock, and clear water with herons nesting in the trees. The price was shockingly low. Too low, honestly. But Dad said the reviews were fine, and he was excited to try somewhere new. None of us had ever heard of Heron's Hollow. I wish we'd left it that way. We arrived around 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. My dad drove, my mom sat shotgun, and I was in the back with my younger brother Nick, who was 14 at the time. We'd been arguing over music most of the drive. The town was weird. It wasn't just small. It felt stuck in time. Most of the houses were run down. People stared when we passed. Not in a friendly way, like we weren't supposed to be there. But the cabin was gorgeous, set right on the lake's edge, with an old dock that reached almost 30 feet out into the water. The lake itself was glassy and still. It reflected the trees perfectly. But it was too still. No birds, no bugs, just this thick silence. Nick ran down to the dock right away, tossed his bag in a bedroom, and begged to go swimming. Mom told him to wait until tomorrow. It was late, and we were tired. That night I stood on the dock by myself. The stars were unreal, but something about the lake bothered me. There were no waves, no sound, just a long, empty dock that creaked slightly even without wind, and I could have sworn I saw a shape, long and low, break the surface for just a second before sliding back under. The next morning started normal. Nick and I fished while Dad grilled breakfast. Mom read on the deck. Around 10 a.m., I noticed something strange. The dock, which had been perfectly straight the night before, now had a slight curve, like it was sagging slightly left. Dad said it was just the wood swelling. But that night, things got strange. We'd gone into town to grab groceries, and when we came back around 8:30, we noticed the dock was longer. We all saw it. It now extended farther than it had yesterday. Mom was the first to say something, and Dad laughed it off. But I knew it. It was at least 6 feet longer. I counted the boards. We ate dinner, played cards, and went to bed. At 3:41 a.m., I woke up to a sound I will never forget. Screaming. From the lake. Not a person. Not human. It was high-pitched and shrill, like metal tearing mixed with something alive. The whole cabin seemed to vibrate with it. I bolted to the window. Nick was outside, standing at the edge of the dock. And the dock was twice as long now. It stretched out deep into the lake, at the end, barely visible in the moonlight. Something was standing. Tall, bent, waiting. I shouted for Nick, loud enough to wake the dead, and sprinted outside barefoot. By the time I hit the deck, he was already halfway back down the dock. He looked dazed. Pale. When I grabbed his arm, he didn't even fight. Just let me pull him inside. We locked the doors, turned on all the lights. Mom and Dad were up now, panicking, asking what was going on. Nick didn't answer them. He just kept whispering. It was calling me. It knew my name. We made him sit down, gave him water. His pupils were huge. His skin was freezing. He kept glancing out the windows like he was afraid something was watching us. I told Dad about the figure at the end of the dock, but he said it was probably a trick of the light. You were half asleep, he said. But I knew what I saw. Something was waiting out there. The next morning, Dad checked the dock. Came back inside real quiet, said nothing was wrong. But I saw the look on his face, that kind of tight-jawed expression he always used when he was lying to protect us. I snuck out after lunch to see for myself. The dock had changed again. Now the wood was warped, swollen and blackened like it had been soaking in water for decades. And at the very end of it, almost hidden beneath the surface, there was a set of stairs. Wooden steps, slippery with algae leading downward into the lake. I leaned closer. The water around the steps was darker. Murky, It didn't reflect the sky. It looked like it absorbed light instead. And when I stepped onto the edge of the dock, I felt something. Like pressure in my chest. Like the lake was pushing back. I backed away slowly. But that night, things got worse. We didn't sleep. None of us. Mom stayed in the living room. Dad sat by the back door with the fire poker. Nick wouldn't speak. At 2:17 a.m., it started again. The screaming, louder than before, longer. We all rushed to the windows and froze. The dock was now glowing faintly, a soft, sickly blue light pulsing along the wood. Something was walking down it, not crawling, not swimming, walking. It had long arms dragging on the ground, legs that bent wrong. Its head lolled from side to side, like it didn't quite belong on the body. But the worst part? It was barefoot, leaving wet, dark footprints behind it. Dad grabbed his keys. "We're leaving. Now." But when we opened the front door, water was rising around the cabin. The lake had crept up halfway across the yard, silently, like it had risen in minutes. The grass squished under our feet. Fish flipped on the front steps. Nick started crying. Mom froze. We had no choice. We went back inside and barricaded the doors with furniture. We moved to the second floor, where the guest rooms were, and waited, listening. The screaming stopped. But something else replaced it. Knocking. From beneath us. Software. Rhythmic. Knock. 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 Like it was coming from under the cabin floor, under the water, trying to get in. Nick whispered, "It knows we're up here." I looked outside. The dock now reached clear across the lake, like it had no end, vanishing into fog. Something had built it. For us. While Mom sat with Nick and Dad tried calling for help, no signal, of course, I started searching the cabin for answers. I found a trap door in the closet of the master bedroom. Inside was a storage crawl space, damp, moldy, and in one corner, a journal, handwritten. The first entry was dated 1978. "The dock has grown again. I told my son not to step on it, but he hears the voices too. My wife says we should leave, but it's too late. The lake keeps what it wants." Another entry from 1982. It calls from below. "The thing with the broken face came back. It was barefoot. It always drips. And it always knocks 3 times. The last page was dated 1994. "Don't answer it. Don't walk the dock. Burn the steps if you can. We didn't. I think it's in the house now." That was it. The journal ended there. The third night came fast. The lake rose into the cabin. We heard the splash of water on the first floor, then the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, waterlogged. We crowded into one room upstairs, armed with whatever we could grab. I had a camping axe, Dad had a golf club. Nick just kept holding Mom's hand. The doorknob turned. Once, twice, then silence. And then, it knocked. Knock, 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 3 times. Right outside the bedroom door. Mom whispered, "Don't move. Don't speak." I could hear water dripping. Something pressed its face against the frosted glass of the window in the door. I saw teeth. Then, it was gone. By morning, the water had receded. The lake was back where it should have been. Calm, still, reflective. The dock was short again. Just 30 feet. We didn't waste time. We threw our stuff in the car, left food and clothes behind, and sped out of Heron's Hollow like the place was on fire. When we got to the next town, Dad tried calling the cabin owner. The number had been disconnected. When we looked up the listing, gone. We never went back. My parents don't talk about it. Nick refuses to go near lakes. Even pools make him nervous. But I couldn't let it go. For years, I tried to find Heron's Hollow again. Online, in forums, on old maps, nothing. Like it was erased. The cabin doesn't show up in rental listings anymore. The town isn't on Google Maps. And every time I think I've found it, a GPS pin, a road name, it leads to an empty field or a stretch of trees. But I know it was real, and sometimes I still hear it. Usually when I'm driving late at night, windows cracked, music off. 3 soft knocks on the roof of my car. Knock, knock, knock. Always 3. I've moved twice since then. Different cities, different states. But 2 weeks ago, I got a postcard in the mail. No return address. On the front was a photo of a long wooden dock stretching out over dark water. And on the back, 5 words, written in smeared black ink. We built it for you. Why I'm telling you this? If you ever come across a town called Heron's Hollow, or find a lake called Whitlow that no one else has heard of, don't stop. Don't stay. If the dock looks too long, if the water is too still, if you hear something screaming in the night, don't open the door, because whatever lives at the bottom of that lake doesn't want to hurt you right away. It wants to walk you out to the end of the dock, wants you to hear it, wants you to follow. And if you do, you'll never come back the same, if you come back at all. If you enjoyed this nightmare, like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.